I just want to start by saying I want to give you some background information. I am right now 76 years old, and I have been away from Franklin for 30 years. So this information causes me to have a cheat sheet because I don't remember half the stuff. I don't even remember where I lived at times, you know. I'm a senior member, so I have problems. So I have to play the cheat sheet. Now, I'll get, I graduated from Drexel. It was then Drexel Institute of Technology. It's today Drexel University. Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering. One of my first jobs was at Philco. I was in the radio lab at the time. And I stayed there for about 3 years. And I moved on into Burroughs. And at Burroughs, I grew up into a project leader position. I had 4 or 5 engineers under me, and I had one Superman, and that was Russ Bauer. He was a person who had a gifted man who was amazing in his skills in both electronics and mechanics. I then joined General Electric as a sales engineer because I was tired of being a desk jockey. I wanted to see people and interface with people instead of just working in an office. I became the East Coast representative from Maine to Florida as the sales engineer then. And the division that I was involved in was the smallest business division that General Electric had at that time. And they had a one-product unit that was a paper tape reader that was powered by a stepping motor. And that device was to be used into a new teletype machine. But paper tape in the United States was very foreign. There was only 2 industries that used paper tape. That was the newspaper industry and the government. But in Europe, that's where it happens. Paper tape is used all in Europe. The reason it's not used in the United States, it was because of IBM. They used punch cards. And I had a tough sale effort because of the lack of people wanting to use it in the States. GE was running into trouble, and they reorganized several times when I was there. And they finally moved us into the computer division. And I was sent to school for 8 weeks to train everything about the computer systems that they had. And about 3 months later, they sold the company, that division rather, they sold to Honeywell. So I had an opportunity to look at the paper tape reader and said, you know, there's a business here, because the teletype group that was developing it was not being built by General Electric anymore. So and Honeywell, I know, would not have done it. So I grabbed a hold of my fine friend Russ Bauer, and we formed a company, and we were putting out paper tape readers. And we were selling them locally in the USA, and then we also sold them over in Europe. And that lasted for several years. I left I left the company and that I had built up called Bauer Associates, or BAI, and I joined a new startup called Psycorp. Now, Psycorp was revolutionary. It was for data entry. It was a mini computer with a built-in monitor and cassettes that protected the information. It also had its own language, and the unit sold for around $15,000. But you didn't sell them at once and two. You sold them into major businesses, and you sold them in large groups. And I was making some good money at the time doing that. But then the major thing happened in my life, and that is in 1975, in January, Popular Electronics magazine showed the MITS Altair computer for a sale of $450 in kit form. The revolution started with Insight jumping on board, Cromemco, Processor Technology, and companies of that sort. They were called S100 companies. The retail stores started to build up, and then you had chain stores. The industry was made for me. I wrote a business plan, and then my wife and myself went to the banks to try to raise some capital, borrow some money, and they thought I was crazy. Who sells computers retail? Who needs it? I mean, who uses a computer at home? No one knew anything about this. I mean, it was a closed area, especially in the East Coast. But we had, if you stay long enough and hard enough, you'll find somebody to do something for you. I had one banker look at me, looks into my eyes, he said, and I am an honest man, and he gave us $30,000. We borrowed $30,000 from a bank. And we put together a store called the Computer Emporium, and it was the hottest store in the Philadelphia area, actually the Delaware Valley area. Our area, we covered from New York City to Washington, D.C. We were unique because we did it right. And then for the second year, we opened up another area of the store. We doubled our space because we had an area of all programs and miscellaneous items. Then the third year, we opened up a store in Center City, Philadelphia, at the Sheraton Hotel that was done by let's see. Decorators, yeah, I'm searching for the word. There's a senior moment here, right? Right? And that store was just magnificent. Unfortunately, it didn't sell anything, but it was looking good. And then the market changed in the sense that you couldn't get money from the banks. It was the period where interest rates were 23%, and we were a very, very profitable company, but no one was paying any bills, and we couldn't raise any cash flow, and it was hurting us. So we decided at that time to sell the stores. And we did that by having two major companies bid against each other. And we had a cycle of about 3 times where I would do one against the other, and things turned out that someone threw in a Datsun 280ZX, and I closed the deal. Now I gave it some serious thought. What was I going to do in life? Because I just sold out everything. I had some money, but I was still a young man. And I just remembered let's see, I should say this. When I had the store, I have to say that Apple was the best company that we dealt with. Originally, we did not want to have Apple. We had S100 units companies, processor technology, TDL, Alpha Micro. These companies had a standard board. They had the 8080 chip in it, or the Z80 chip, and but what happened was that customers would come in and ask for Apple, and they did it in quantity, and so I became an authorized Apple dealer within 3 weeks of that activity. And Apple was the best company at that time. They were the most professional company. They had Mike Markula, they had Mike Scott, they had Woz, and they had the best PR firm, the best advertising, and they were just a polished company. But then when time went on, certain arrogance happened. They started to become not supportive of a dealer. They were they were actually, I'm sorry, they actually authorized too many dealers in certain areas, especially in our area. They were anxious to get the growth activity in that area. So when you were a dealer and you ordered 100 units from Apple and you only get 30, you get very upset. And we had some problems in that area. If a customer who bought, we'll say a large quantity, and he did not sell it, he was using it for his internal use, Apple would actually authorize him as a dealer so that they could get a wholesale price. I mean, and that was unfair for the other dealers. Let's see. Oh yeah, okay. An example was in institutional facilities or companies, like the University of Pennsylvania was one of our customers. They promised that if they were going to turn around and sell product themselves, because they were going to sell it to the students, that Apple will honor it with a 3% kickback to us, to the customer, to the dealer rather. Well, I did supply University of Pennsylvania, and they did become an authorized dealer by Apple, and I never saw that 3%. And it's that type of thing that sort of spoiled your interest in dealing with Apple. But after selling the stores, I realized that was an opportunity. It was very much like having soda. You have cream soda, you have cherry soda, you have root beer, but the colas, Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola, are the real sodas. I mean, they count for more than all the other sodas put together. Well, that's the way it is with Apple. They had IBM type of computers out there, all kinds of different companies, but there was only one Apple. It was different. It had a 6502 chip. The other ones had an 8080 chip. And so I wanted to be the Pepsi-Cola to Apple's Coca-Cola. And so I got a hold of Russ Bauer again, and we started to design a an Apple look-alike, but we wanted to make it different. So we were aiming at the business market. So we said we're going to design a unit that would have the monitor built in, the keyboard built in, and the disk drive would be built in. And we had that design been going on, and another person wanted to join our team, and that was Barry Borden. And Barry was a former president of a company called Delta Data. And Barry sort of got pushed out. And when we put together a team of people, Barry had I'm sorry, the financial, very good, thank you, Sherry. Financial contacts and the contacts with a good law firm, very powerful law firm, a typical law firm, a Philadelphia law firm. And the law firm had the contacts with the financial people. And so we wrote a business plan and submitted it to a law firm because they wanted to make sure everything with the problems of having a competitive company. And we got we got it back. No, not the back. What? Yeah, well, no, that's something else. Okay, anyway, we got the business plan back looking good, except they took all the adjectives away. Okay, that was and then we decided that we had a prototype that we had the venture capital people come in. The two venture capital people were a man named Howard Morgan, who was a dual professorship at the University of Pennsylvania. He was a professor for business and a professor for engineering. And he was starting into the venture capital field. And the other one was Jim Simons, who was also a professor, but he was a genius. And he had a venture capital company going at that time. And the both of them together sort of merged, and they became a heavy hitters. And we arranged a meeting at a lab in the University of Pennsylvania that they wanted to see the prototype that we had, which was this so-called business machine. Unfortunately, we were bringing it in, and Russ Bauer dropped it, and they broke the damn thing. So we had to, I happened to be it, because I'm a salesman, I happened to have a backup, which was the breadboard. And so I took the broken unit that didn't work, but showed it what it would look like, and then we had the breadboard that we put together while we were in the lab that worked. And so as he was leaving, Jim Simons was leaving, he shook my hand, and in it was a piece of paper that said that you would get X amount of $1 million if you did this, and that was the beginning of the company. The second problem we had is that we didn't have a name yet. And we were talking about, we would meet, I would say the three of us, Barry Borden, Russ Bauer, and myself would meet frequently in different areas for lunch. And one day we sat down at a place in Philadelphia, Roosevelt Boulevard and Cotman Avenue, and it was called the Franklin Family Restaurant. And I thought about it, and Franklin was an excellent name. I mean, a local Philadelphian who came by choice into Philadelphia. He was a science person in the sense that he knew about electricity, and he was clever and smart, and I said, hey, that's a positive name. So that's how Franklin came about. We also had a problem with doing the business unit because most of the components were not made by us. They would be made by putting together a monitor and whatever pieces are the external pieces, and they added up too much. So we wanted to build a similar unit to an Apple with improvements. And what that turned out to be is the problem, I should say, is that it took a year to build the molds to make the plastic case. And we tried to encourage the people who were building the molds to expedite it, and we paid extra money to do it. But at the same time, I was very impatient, so I went out and tried to find something to put together, and we found a case that looked, a plastic case that would look like it would fit our needs, and sure enough it did. It was, and then we got a designer to paint it to look better, because it painted brown on the bottom so it melded into the desk and things of that sort, and that became the ACE 100. And we built 2,000 of them just to get started. And when you think about 2,000 units at an early time, this was March of 1982. And we wanted to introduce the unit at the Boston show, Apple Fest show. And what happened was that they wouldn't even let us in. So we went out, we hired some models who had Boston, let's see, it was with New England's Patriots, but it was then the Boston Patriots, and they had uniforms that, cheerleader uniforms that were revolutionary style. I mean, they looked like they came from the Revolutionary. You will see this in the display that we have in the building. And the people would actually would not allow them on the sidewalk. The security people would chase the girls away, the women away. And that's illegal. So we contacted our attorneys, and within a half hour we got an injunction. And we also had the girls have a chance to win ACE 100. They had cards, and they had on the cards they had what the unit did, and so forth and so on. And then you pull half of the card away, and you put it into a basket for them to pick it out, so that you could see who was going to win it. Well, that was more effective than anything that was happening inside the stadium or whatever that was, the Apple Fest show. Then we had the benefit of learning what was happening, at the ACE 100. And the first thing that we learned is that business is very tough, because there was a little company in Arizona that sued us because they said they had the name ACE. Now, we changed that very quickly, because we called it a Franklin ACE, and that made it legal. Now, in our eyes, ACE was an acronym, and anybody who could figure out what it stood for, we'll give them a jacket. What's that? Close, but not all the way. One word off. What's that? I didn't hear that.
Enhanced.
No.
Is it Apple Computer Emulator?
You got it, kid. Very good. Now, the lawyers heard about that and said, if you never say that in your life. So we just called it ACE, right? Now, we had, after the 100, one thing that was different on the 100 was it had no color. It was a black and white unit, but in a short period of time, they had companies, independent companies, who were putting out little devices that they would put it in the back of the Franklin 100 that made color, that gave it color. Now, we didn't want to use the color because it was patent pending. And that's patent law is very dangerous. You know, you don't infringe on patent law. And the copyrightable issue that took place later was defensible by us. You can't really copyright software, the internal makings of a program. You could copyright the external look of the program, but that's all changed now. The law changed because there was a case that took place between Apple and Franklin, and it's called the Franklin Apple, law issue. You could look that up at any time. And the original case had it where we had it. The judgment took place in Philadelphia, and the judge said that they could not get an injunction against Franklin because the case looked like they couldn't win, which was very positive. But in a way not, because we didn't really want to win. And the reason for that is the fear of the Asians coming in. If we were allowed to do this without a license, we would be in trouble because the Asians would, overrun the market. So we had a big law case that came up a couple of years later when we had the ACE 1000 come out, because we had now a complete unit. It was it had color capability. It had a better power supply than Apple. It had built-in fan. It had a keyboard that had VisiCalc capabilities. It had some other features, that I can't think of. But we had a unit that was very, very effective. Let me just get it online here. Okay, here I am. Okay, during the period that we had now, we were in the period around March of '83 now, that's a year later. We had a slow selling period for all the computer companies. And we had especially floppy drives that were purchased from an independent vendor that were very expensive. There was a shortage of floppy drives at one time, and then the prices went up, and then we had a warehouse full of these drives. And I gave it a thought, and I said, all we had to do was take the cover off of the Franklin 1000 and put this other cover on that would be holding a floppy drive, or 2 floppy drives on each side. And we had that done. We had a casting of that piece on the top, and it gave us a new unit. It became the Franklin Ace 1200 for the 2 drives. And if we had 1 drive, it would be the 1100. But the case, that piece of case was plastic, would fit in on the old 1000. So the 1000 wasn't obsolete. And that became the biggest sales that we could have with the Franklin 1200. The first year of business, which was, 1982 to 1983, we did $28 million with a $2.5 million profit. I mean, that's amazing, because we had equipment we had to buy, we had new facilities. The first facility we had was a 50,000 square foot building. And it was in Pennsauken, New Jersey. And then when we really were running the following year, it materialized into, I think it was 80 million. 80 million with a $10 million loss. Now that's what we have to go into. What happened was we were doing quite well, and we had a change in management. For some reason, I was pushed upstairs to become, I don't know what I became, truthfully, and the person who replaced me was from a different world. He was hiring people that had names. He was hiring people from IBM, from Texas Instrument, from Intel, and they were getting salaries that were twice as much that we were paying at that time. And although those people who came on board were always bringing their buddies with them who were getting the same salaries, so we were becoming a very bloated company. Yeah. Well, we had, that's right. Thank you, Hunter. We had an arrangement with, I'm trying to think of the names, Montgomery Securities and Smith Barney. That's right, Smith Barney. And they gave a look-see, and they said that we were a company that they were going to back. It would be an IPO, you know. And I'm getting lost here. I was going to say the IPO. Well, okay, now I'm on it. Okay, here's I'm back on. The management change took place from being president to co-chairman. Why this happened, I really don't know. The person who replaced me started to hire people from companies like IBM, blah, blah, blah. We were a small company with big sales. Now, what they started doing is we moved into new facilities of about 500,000 square feet with custom designed new fixtures, furnitures at top prices. They lay down tracks at the manufacturer's floor to transfer inventory at a $1 or $2 million loss. It never worked. For Comdex in 1983, they threw a music concert based using the Beach Boys at a cost of $500,000. They ended up entertaining more Apple employees than our dealers. Our QC department would run the computers for 48 hours to test the transistors. And the new group stopped testing, telling us that they would have less than 3% failure. Needless to say, that was an incorrect statement that eventually went back to the original way. It appeared that most of our new executives were warehousing themselves, as it would turn out, and many of them were big shots that had been forced out of their previous companies. Now, when Apple sued us for infringement of their copyright, we really didn't want to win. We wanted to have a license, and because winning would allow the Asian companies to come into the market. Meanwhile, the management was spending money that they didn't have, and the IPO investors were waiting for the settlement of the lawsuit before they would bring us public. I would complain about all these negative things, and I saw going to the board of directors. I was a member of the board of directors, which I was one of. Apparently, I was a pain in the ass for them because I was now pushed out of the company, and I sat down and wrote a long letter to Jim Simons, giving my opinion of what was going to happen in the future, after all my interests were real, because I owned a large piece of Franklin at the time. Well, 6 months later, all the previous people were fired. And Jim Simons wanted me to come back and get the company going again. The deal was that he would bring on some person who would put money back into the company to revive it, and he would be the CEO, and I would run the operation. I was, for 6 months, without talking to anybody at the company. I couldn't believe how bad things were. The Franklin Ace 1200 was a solid computer with a power supply and fan that would last forever. One of the executives of the company got a buddy of his build a time, now failed, a power supply that used to work 100% of the time, now failed 100% of the time, all the time, and was not able to be repaired. The new CEO was an attorney who specialized in bankruptcy law. He never put in the money that was promised, and he wanted to place Franklin into bankruptcy. I fought this action, and 5 months later I left the company. But before that happened, strange things happened at Franklin. One of the board members was from South America. I think it was Colombia, and he was big in PVC material. PVC in Colombia was used for actually shoes, besides making it for other reasons. The poor people of Colombia had these plastic shoes they were wearing, and this guy was the manufacturer of these plastic shoes. Colombia was a very dangerous country to live in because kidnapping was a business. And unfortunately, he was a member of the board, and he was kidnapped. And the board had 9 people, and we had 8 people left, because he was away in the fact that we didn't know where he was. And we, when the gentleman who became the CEO, he wanted to put it in a bankruptcy. I didn't want that to happen because I would lose my stock. And the fact that the assets were significantly greater than the liabilities. We had no reason to go to bankruptcy except that the man who was going to be the CEO, that's the only knowledge he had was you put it in bankruptcy and you get everything done, cleaned out, and you go ahead. There was a much better way to do it because bankruptcy, nobody would buy from us. Now, the man was who was kidnapped caused a problem because we had 4 people who wanted to go into bankruptcy and 4 people who didn't want to go into bankruptcy. And that's a standstill. The people who didn't want to go into bankruptcy was myself and a Greek person who had ships. He was a shipbuilder, right? And the 4 other people were the original members of the board. The members of the board wanted to get out of it. They just wanted to get rid of the problem. And we would have these meetings all the time, and it was 4-4, 4-4. And we couldn't get it changed. But then a SWAT team came in Columbia and were looking for a little child that had been kidnapped. And at the time when they found the little child there, they found the man handcuffed to the bed also, and he was freed. So now that guy came back and changed the whole situation where the bankruptcy then took place. What? He voted for the bankruptcy, of course. And that changed the whole situation. Now, what my activity was at that time was basically laying off people. I was there to try to save the company, and I couldn't do the things I wanted to do, which was to close. I wanted to close the doors for about 2 months, get the power supplies that we normally have back into circulation, back into production, and I also had previously a little team of engineers who were designing a IBM type of unit. We had 1,400 dealers, and these dealers were helpful, in keeping the company alive. I should back up for one thing. We had a program when we were active, before the bankruptcy, I would visit stores throughout the country. We had the setup where we had Franklin people, or a distributor, or a rep in different areas. And we would go into these areas. It would be LA area, and we would go in to find out, tell them what we were doing and how we were working, and then we would ask them what their needs were. And it worked out very nicely. Now, what we found out was that Apple had the older dealers, who were the more professional dealers at the time. They were more prepared. And our dealers were just starting out. So we had to do something about that. And we put together what would be Franklin Institute. And we set out teachers to help the dealers by training them in the basics of profit and loss and how to repair things and how to sell things and stuff of that sort. And we improved the dealers, I mean, and the statement that you... Yeah, and the better the dealer, the better the sales. So that was a very effective program. And here we had 1,400 dealers, and they're destroying the company, these in the board, because they were going to go through bankruptcy, and the dealer now is reluctant to buy anything from Franklin. He's the way we taught our customers to sell the product was very easy. They would come in and they would say, listen, I'm looking for an Apple. And the customer said, that's a great idea, that's a great problem, wonderful unit. But however, we have this other unit over here, it's called a Franklin. And that unit has a keyboard that is different than the Apple. It has a keyboard for VisiCalc built into it. It has a stronger power supply. The power supply has a fan on it. It has all the good things that we could throw at it. And 9 out of 10 times. Oh, by the way, it was a cheaper unit. And they would sell the Franklin over the Apple. The problem we would have, actually, we couldn't produce enough units fast enough. We had built up, in '83, we reached the level of 10,000 units per month. But out of the story I told you about how we were destroying the company simultaneously is that of the 10,000 that we were building a month, they were spending, we lost, that year we had $80 million rather, and the outcome was that it was a $10 million loss. That stopped the venture capital people in the fact that the law was not settled, and that did not happen until after the bankruptcy took place. How am I doing in time? What? I got to wind down. All right, let me go for questions and answers. Is anything Q&A? Anything? For me, I have a sorry story. I went to Commodore. Now, I want to tell you, I was vice president of marketing at Commodore. What? Yeah, I had the Amiga. I had all 3 products of Commodore. Commodore was worse than a prison camp. It was the worst managed company I've ever seen. The people everybody was spies on everybody else. It was so unpleasant that I had to get out of there. Okay, that was just one of the companies, but I went to many companies, I had a reputation. I was able to speak succinctly, not like I am now. People used to understand me. It's difficult to remember all the things that I did at the time. I'm thinking of the different companies I. What? Oh yeah, we had I started in another company called Maxa Corporation, which was a software company. What else did I do? Oh yeah, Macblue. I had a company called Macblue. It was a combination of Franklin and an Apple and an IBM machine. So it had dual things. Yeah. Anything else?
I remember using programs, programs called Ace Writer and
That's right.
Ace Cap. What was
Yeah.
the rationale for branding your own software?
It was, well, it made it more powerful to sell. I mean, obviously, when you were going to sell a unit, and you say, hey, we have the software that goes with it, there's an ACE Writer or an ACE Walk or whatever, it was helpful. And the price that we paid for it was significantly lower than you could get from the main source. Yeah, we did a lot of bundling of that, right? That type of thing. Yes.
So, currently there's this big issue over software patents and whether they should be legitimate.
Yeah.
You know, and then of course, you know, patent trolls, you know, a lot of issues related to that. So if you were, you know, now with the 2020 hindsight, if you were looking back at what the these problems that you just described, in reference to intellectual property law, what would you recommend that people do nowadays? Where would you see?
I'll tell you, that has changed 3 times since they had a look and feel method. I mean, that was absurd. That didn't work out. So it's very difficult. I mean, I want to tell you that I'm very sympathetic with Apple in the sense that they were getting screwed by us in a way. But the reality of life at that time, the law was on our side. So it was an ethical thing or something, right? Yeah. So we it was there. I mean, the government didn't come up the speed of what the technology was doing, and that was the problem. And it still is a problem. I mean, I'm saying it still is a problem. I mean, the people who are really getting hurt now are pharmaceuticals. They are having a problem with that. I mean, because it falls into the patent area of pharmaceuticals. And they don't get the patent until the lifespan is almost over already. I mean, that is a problem with that. Anything else, sir? Yes.
I was just wondering, do you know how many units of Franklin's were produced and sold?
How many units Franklin sold?
Yeah.
Total? Well, in my period of time, oops. I'm sorry. No, I really can't answer that. I don't really know. It had basically a 3-year lifespan when I was there. No, that was it. And then afterwards, there's a sad story. An agreement was reached between Apple and Franklin over the lawsuit. Franklin paid $2.5 million for a penalty, and the part of the deal was they would help the software to be independent of Apple software that would work on all the Apple programs. And they helped Franklin to do that. Well, that showed a certain closeness, but it was also in lieu of a license. It was an implied license that we had. But what happened is that when you build a product outside of the country, when the product comes into the country, it's inspected. And if someone says to the people that this company is doing something illegal, they're using a copy or they're doing something illegal, the department that handles that, federal department, will impound the products and put it in a warehouse until it's settled. Well, Apple, Franklin, Jesus, I'm in a hurricane here. When Franklin decided to build again, after he got his feet back to build a computer, it went overseas. It was built by Samsung. This is a story I heard. And it was built, they have heavy inventory for Christmas, and it was coming in for the Christmas period. And Apple pointed the finger at Franklin, and they said, they are infringing on our rights, which was not supposed to happen because there was an agreement there. And what they did was impound the product, and they never hit the Christmas season. So that was one of the problems they faced. You know, it's dog eat dog out there. So they pulled that on us. Is there anything else? Huh? Well, thank you. I'm sorry for my...